Boy, I'm thrilled to see all of you again. This is the third in our series on education materials related to understanding what is and what is not human sex trafficking, particularly in Southern California. Again, my name is David Oates. I am the chair of the Human Trafficking Task Force for District 5340, along with some of the great members that we have on there with Mark Rodriguez, Mike Barton, Danny Womack, Bonnie Welch, and others that are here. We're thrilled that you're able to take some time, not only here live, but certainly if you're seeing the recorded version, this is a real treat. I have known Jamie Beck for several years, and she is a force to be reckoned with in launching what has become a real power for human trafficking survivors, but also to educate the rest of the country on what human sex trafficking is and isn't. She is the managing partner and founder of Free to Thrive. It is the nonprofit legal services that provides a litany of services pro bono for human trafficking survivors and other aspects of this scourge. Jamie, it is always a thrill to see you. I know you got a special treat for us with a video and a panel discussion afterwards. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you just for all of your support and your work along with your fellow Rotarians on this really, really important issue. I'm beyond thrilled to be here presenting to all of you today with my colleagues from Free to Thrive, and I'm so excited to screen this film. This film was, it was created in part, we originally created it for our fundraising event in 2020 in the world of COVID. We thought, you know, what can we do to engage the community around this issue in a really meaningful way? And what we didn't know going into this was how impactful this film would be, not just for this one event, but really as an educational tool for the community to understand not just human trafficking, but specifically what we do at Free to Thrive and why we do it. Oftentimes people do not understand why a survivor of human trafficking would need a lawyer and what kinds of legal needs they would have. I don't want to spoil any part of the film, so I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but it really is meant to teach you about the work that we do at Free to Thrive. And I'll tell you that the story in this film is not any one client's story, but rather a combination of the many, many stories that we have heard over the years from our survivors that we work with at Free to Thrive. So with that, I will turn it over to you to cue up the film. The only caveat that I would say is it's a heavy subject. And I just, you know, if anybody is not comfortable at any time watching any parts of the film, I urge you to do whatever is best for you. And with that, I hope you enjoy it. And I really look forward to the discussion following the film. And if everybody else could just mute your mics during the film, that way we don't get any feedback.
What you got there, kiddo?
It's a surface, Grandpa.
No. Let me take a closer look at this, all right? Look at that. Woo, pretty.
Okay, she has to go now.
Who has to go?
The starfish.
Oh, yeah, the starfish. Yeah. Well, where's she going?
Oh.
Oh. Well, I don't know, honey. You know, well, this whole beach is covered in those things. You know, I don't know if it'll really make a difference.
I made a difference to that one.
Yeah, you did. Nice work. Ready to jump in the water?
No.
Well, I don't think so. Too cold. Let's go look for some more starfish.
When is Mommy coming home?
Soon, sweet pea. Soon.
The cock is in the hen house. Martinez. You still single? Lee. Smile, beautiful. You two on the same cycle yet? Wake up, ugly. Grant, you have a visitor. Get your shoes.
Who's the visitor?
A little quicker. Turn around. You have an hour.
Okay, well, my name is Grace. I'm an attorney with the nonprofit Free to Thrive. Do you remember speaking with me on the phone? Yeah. Okay. To see if we can help you, I'll need to ask you a few questions. Is that okay?
Do I have to pay you or something?
No. Our services are free.
Nothing is free in life. What's the catch?
There isn't one. Promise. Okay. Let's start with your name.
My name is Iris Grant.
My name is Lee.
Martinez.
At what age were you first trafficked? Meaning sold for sex or something of value.
17.
And how do you know your trafficker?
He was my boyfriend.
And have you ever been arrested for a crime related to your exploitation?
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable telling me what happened?
Yeah. I was waiting in an empty parking lot with my boyfriend. I was waiting for my next date.
Did you feed Sam before you left home like I told you?
What do you mean did I feed her? She's my daughter. Of course I fed her.
Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
When's this guy gonna get here? I don't want you to leave her alone long.
He'll get here when he gets here. Keep your mouth shut, relax, save your energy.
She's just asking a question.
Shut the fuck up. If I want a conversation, I'll let you know. That's probably him pulling up now. Relax. Keep your mouth shut and act normal. Understood? Evening, officer.
Evening. What are you folks doing out here tonight?
We're waiting on a friend. We can move if you'd like.
You know, this parking lot's a private property. We got a call for an unknown vehicle. You have your driver's license and registration?
Yeah.
And hers?
It's there too.
Why does he have your ID? You alright?
Why didn't you fucking answer him?
You said to be quiet.
What's the deal?
Just a couple kids, but girl looks scared about something. Keep an eye out. Dispatch 4-1.
Got 2 strikes against me, Iris.
So? What's that got to do with anything?
The fucking car, Iris. Damn.
Is the car stolen?
God. If he comes back with anything, you're taking the fucking heat for this shit. If I go back, I'm going back for good.
Dispatch 4-1. Over. Could you run a California tag for me?
Over. Is there another unit that can get to position to be secondary? Address on the suspect.
I know where your family lives. You know I got eyes everywhere. What about your daughter?
Asshole. She's your daughter too.
Advising FE. Stole the vehicle.
Fuck, stolen vehicle.
They're gonna be northbound by
Hold your hands up! Keep your hands up! Lift your shirt while you turn around to the sound of my voice. Interlace your fingers behind your head. Walk backwards until I tell you to stop. Stop. Get down on your knees. Cross your legs. All right, Anderson, you get him. Do you have anything you want to declare in the vehicle before I search it? Forgot about these? Hey, Anderson, call dispatch. Get a tow out here while I finish searching the vehicle.
Are you okay? We can take a break. I can come back another day.
No, no, no.
It's okay. Do you remember what happened at your court hearing?
Yes.
Tell me about that day.
Now calling next case. People versus Grant. Ms. Grant, today you're pleading guilty to the following charges. Count 1, grand theft auto. Count 2, possession of a controlled substance. Count 3, possession of an illegal firearm. Has anyone threatened you to get you to plead guilty? Ms. Grant, your responses need to be a verbal yes or no. Please answer the question.
No, sir.
Is it your own free choice to plead guilty?
Yes, sir.
And you want me to accept this plea?
Yes, sir.
I hereby find that you voluntarily entered this plea, and I accept it. I hereby sentence you to 786 days in custody and 3 years probation. Next case.
I had no choice. I needed to protect my family. I'm done with that life. Him, all of it.
I'm sorry you went through that. I'm glad to hear you're changing your path. That's the hardest step. What are some of your goals for the future?
Well, I want to get my life back on track. I always wanted to be a nurse, but I know I can't because of my record.
Well, there is something we can do to help. It's called vacature. It's a special law. It allows human trafficking survivors to clear their records if the charges are related to their trafficking. Well, we won't be able to file this until you get out, but we can start working on it now.
So, what happens now?
Well, you told me bits and pieces of what happened to you, but in order to clear your record, I'll need your whole life story. If you feel comfortable, you can write it down and send me letters. I'll prepare the filings on your behalf. How does that sound?
Yeah. And this is really free.
Yes. 100%.
Time's up. Come on. Turn around.
Dear Grace, things in here have been tough lately. Being able to take college classes makes things more bearable. I didn't tell the cops the truth because I know what Darren is capable of. When I was 9, my mom's boyfriend made me do unspeakable things. She didn't believe me, so I ran away. I met Darren when I was 17 and homeless. He told me he would take care of me and that he loved me. The first time he sold me, he said he needed to pay rent and it wouldn't happen again. But it kept happening. If I said I didn't want to do it, he beat me. I had $1,000 a day quota. He wouldn't let me eat or sleep until I made it. I never saw a dime. I can't wait to get out and finish my degree and hold my little girl.
Hi. I'd like to file this vacature petition.
What is this? I've never seen this before.
It's not the first one I've heard that. It's called the vacature petition. It allows human trafficking survivors to clear nonviolent charges related to their trafficking.
Great. Here's your copy. Your court date is June 23rd, 8:30 a.m. Department 4 before Judge Withers.
Thank you.
Next.
Next case, People versus Grant. Can I have the appearances?
Good morning, Your Honor. Sarah McCarthy on behalf of the people.
Good morning, Your Honor. Grace Helmsley on behalf of Petitioner Iris Grant, who is present with me.
Ms. Grant, I've read your petition for vacature. I must say, you've come a long way since last year in my courtroom. Have you continued with your college education since your release?
Yes, sir.
Well, you should be very proud of yourself. Keep it up. Ms. McCarthy, does the state have any objection to this petition?
No, Your Honor.
Hearing no objection and finding good cause, I hereby grant this petition. Good luck, Ms. Grant.
Grace, you have no idea how much this means to me, to my family, everyone.
You did the hard part by sharing your story. I just did the paperwork. I hope to get an invite to your pinning ceremony when you become a nurse.
Oh yeah, girl.
Well, now, that was intense, but well worth the presentation. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. You know, I've lost count of how many times I've watched the film, and it still touches me each time I watch it, because the director and the entire cast and crew did just such an amazing job of truly showing our viewers what, you know, what this work is really like. And you know, we really wanted to be able to humanize this work without sharing our client stories. We are very thrilled to partner with a film company called False Heart Productions. And one thing that I'm really thrilled to share with you is that this film has now won awards around the world in different film festivals. So it's been really exciting to see so many other people around the world get to see this film and get to learn about this work. And, you know, one of the things that I think is most educational about this film is that, you know, when people think of victims and survivors of human trafficking, and they think, you know, law enforcement shows up, and what do they think happens? They think that the police arrest the perpetrator and they help the victim. And the reality is in our clients' cases, too often it is actually not the case. Too often our clients are arrested for crimes related to their trafficking, and that's very often how we find them. As you can see from this film, we go into jail and meet with survivors and go through this process of hearing their stories and helping them clean up their records. And so, and just one other thing I wanted to note before we jump into our panel is that, you know, as you can tell from this, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the starfish story. Maybe just a show of hands of people who've heard the starfish story, know what it is. If you're not familiar with the starfish story, I highly recommend just looking it up. If you Google starfish story, you'll find a lot of different versions of essentially the same story. And, you know, we at Free to Thrive, the starfish story is a really important part of our daily work, because the starfish story, what it does is it reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference. And, you know, this issue is so big. The issue of human trafficking, I mean, oftentimes people, when I tell them what I do for a living, they're like, wow, that's really heavy. That's really tough work. And it is, it's really tough work. And this issue is dark, and you see some of the worst things in society. But the reality is that, you know, if we can help one person, we know we made a difference. And we really, we think of all of our clients as starfishes, and it may sound a little, I don't know, a little cheesy, but we actually tell starfish stories every Friday at our team meetings. And the idea behind that is, what did you do this week to make a difference in someone's life? And it could be about a client, it could be about something that somebody else at Free to Thrive did. It could be something from your personal life, but the idea is to remember that, you know, even on our darkest days or even on our toughest weeks, something good happened. We did something good to help someone. And, you know, particularly during these really challenging times, one of the things that is getting me through this crisis is knowing that I have the ability to help people, that I have some purpose in this world. And, you know, as dark as this subject is, there's a lot of light, and the light is our clients. The light is our team at Free to Thrive. And with that, I will turn it over to our amazing team to share with you a little bit more about this film and how it tells the story of the work that we do every day. So I want to introduce you to three amazing superheroes at Free to Thrive. We have Dion Sales McKinney, who is our client liaison. We have Nicholas Moore, who is our senior staff attorney and runs our family justice program. And we have Erin Hiltz, who is our criminal vacatur coordinator. And just these are part of our, as we at Free to Thrive refer to them endearingly as Team Awesome, because they really are quite incredible humans. As you can imagine, doing this work is not easy, and they do it with passion and with love and with purpose. So with that, I'm going to bring them up. And I don't know, I guess right now I'm just seeing Dave. I don't know if it's pinned, if the view is pinned on you or not, or if it's on speaker view, but hopefully you all can see our speakers.
It should be on speaker view, but I could certainly pin, so you can go ahead and share what you need to share.
Yeah, So first question here is going to go to Dion. Dion, one question that viewers of this film may ask themselves is, why didn't she leave him sooner? Why didn't she tell the judge that she was being coerced to plead guilty? Can you give us a little perspective from what you've seen from your work at Free to Thrive about why Iris made the difficult choices that she made in this film?
Thank you for teeing that up, Jamie. Definitely, if you think about women, women are naturally protectors. One of the things that he talked about was her daughter and her family. So naturally, she wanted to prevent her daughter or her family to be harmed by what she had experienced, what he had done to her. So naturally, she didn't want her daughter or her family to experience the same. Unfortunately, there are many layers to trauma that our clients experience, and sometimes they don't realize the impact or the fact that they've been coerced or exploited until they have come out of the situation they're in. I asked you to picture it in the terms of a tunnel. You're driving through a tunnel and it's light outside when you enter the tunnel. But while you're in the tunnel, it's dark and it's cold. But when you come back out, it's light again. And that's what it's like with our clients. While they're in the tunnel, their life is in turmoil. Situations are coming up. And one thing I want to share is I was just very fortunate to have her father keep her daughter. Our clients are not that fortunate. Some of our clients have lost their children to their exploiter, or they've lost their children to CPS. So she was pretty fortunate in here to see it. I will say that at Free to Thrive, we're very fortunate to get trained regularly on how to be trauma informed and how to address our clients and how to be respectful of their feelings. This is very dark, and I'm pretty sure you could tell by the film, but the way in which the attorneys and the staff deal with them in such a respectful way, non-judgmental way. Our clients are open to share their stories. If you look at that film and you saw how Iris transitioned from being frustrated and being antagonistic to trusting, that's the part that I want you guys to focus on. And that's what we get to experience with our different clients at Free to Thrive.
Thank you so much, Dion. And I loved seeing that shift in the film of seeing, even when she's meeting with Grace, her body language changed. At first, she was very standoffish, and then she warmed up. And that actually is a perfect segue into my next question, which is for Erin. Erin, you have had that role that Grace had of going into jail and meeting with survivors who are in jail very oftentimes on crimes that are related to their exploitation. How does seeing this film, resonate with you, and how does it compare to your own experience working with survivors in jail?
I think that the film did an incredible job of accurately capturing how little trust there is when you first walk into this room. And when we go in, we're asking for this very personal story in a very impersonal space. And it's really hard to get a client to open up when you're first meeting them and asking them for the worst details about their life. So the film did an incredible job of capturing that and just showing that it's not easy to trust somebody from the legal system in our client's position. And it takes a little bit to get them to warm up and to share the details of the things that have happened to them. But it also does a really good job of capturing just how strong our clients are and how strong survivors are. They have been through it. They have been threatened, often injured, and they find this light at the end of the tunnel, like Dion was saying, and they make that shift from having to be so fiercely protective to understanding that they can trust our attorneys. And one of the things I also really enjoy is that she really does question twice. Like, is this really free? Because nobody can picture having an attorney for free, especially if there's a family law need, a criminal law need. They know about public defenders, but we're not public defenders. So they do often question whether or not the service that we're providing is free. And I know that I would go into details about, we receive some funding from the county. We have really generous donors, but there are a lot of people who are committed to undoing some of the effects of this exploitation.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, that trusting piece. I know there's one client in particular. I don't know if you wouldn't mind sharing of just, there was one time in jail when I remember you telling a story about a client who it had a particularly interesting, reaction to it first and came around. Do you want to share that? I don't know if you remember this specific one, but her body language like completely shifted. And I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you remember that?
I do. I remember that when I first came in, she was very sitting to the side. It was as though she was ready to get up and flee at a moment's notice. And then as we continued meeting, I was getting a lot more of face-to-face time instead of face-to-side time. And like smiling for the first time was such an accomplishment and an achievement in building that relationship with her.
It doesn't surprise me because Erin is incredibly, as you can tell just from hearing her speak, an incredibly warm and kind person, just as the character Grace in the film was. And it takes that kind of person to be able to build that trust with somebody who has learned to not trust anybody, and for good reason, because people have betrayed them, right? So thank you for sharing that, Erin. Nick, we created this film in the midst of a historic moment and a historic movement for racial justice. In creating this film, we really struggled with what race Irish should be, because we didn't want to perpetuate any stereotypes about human trafficking survivors. Ultimately, we included a woman of a few different races to show that no one is immune from this heinous issue. Or we included several women of different races to be able to show that no one is immune from this heinous crime. What is the intersection of the racial justice movement and our work with human trafficking survivors?
First, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for having us. It's always a pleasure to speak to such a distinguished group about the work that we do. In terms of the racial justice movement and trafficking, 2/3 of our clients are women of color. All races are trafficked. Trafficking is about exploitation of vulnerable people. That's what it really is. But the fact that 2/3 of our clients are women of color is really reflective of the disproportionate, one, criminalization of people of color that tend to happen in this country. And then two, the intersection of poverty and people of color in this country. Since this movement has began, there have been actually arrests of our clients for certain crimes that I'm convinced if they were white, they would have been treated differently by the police officers. If they hadn't suffered the trauma that they had previously suffered at the hands of law enforcement, they would have been perceived differently and probably would have interacted differently with law enforcement as well. It's not lost on me that most of the criminal justice system is good people trying to do good things for society. But what tends to happen is perception becomes reality. So it's important. And one of the good things that I hope has come out of this particular moment in the ongoing racial justice movement is that we have a better understanding of how we, in positions of power and authority, are controlled by some of our perceptions.
Thank you, Nick, for that insight. Dion, as a survivor advocate, you work closely with our clients and support them in addressing their non-legal needs. Can you tell us how COVID has impacted our client population and what Free to Thrive has done to help them through it?
Thank you. And if that's me making that noise, sorry. they have faced many challenges. Some have started jobs and have lost their jobs. Some of them have kids who they're trying to work on schooling at home. We have clients that have had housing issues. We're very fortunate that we have been able to help them during this period. We have several programs, the STEER program, which we focus on their essential emergency resources with regards to employment, housing, education. We have a number of clients that don't have their GED, and so we're encouraging them to take this time to go online to get this done. A number of our clients have suffered from being isolated. While some of us, it's okay to stay in our house, this has brought up a lot of challenges for our clients. So we share resources for mental mindfulness, as well as our Thriving to Grow Together program has really encouraged them by helping them connect with other survivors to build community and connection. And we've seen some positive things come out of that. In addition to that, we, with our Financial Empowerment Academy, we're helping them to really focus on, while you might not have a lot of money now, right now, learning to manage what you do have for that time. Because they're gonna get there. When they do have employment again, to be able to take care of their household. So I'm very excited for all of the things we get to do. And if you do not mind, I'd like to go back to my first question, the first question to me. And I wanted to convey to you that one of the major reasons that she may not have left her trafficker or may not have shared with the judge what was going on is a trauma bond that is so strong. It is like glue. And this has been a person that has been with them and have convinced them that police are bad and that police will harm them. So I would be careful not to look at it as, oh, all police don't save. I hate to tell you that, but they don't. And for this client, they have had some negative interactions with police to the point where when they're faced with choosing to protect their family, protect their children, or tell on their exploiter, I'm sorry, they end up choosing going to jail. And if you remember from the film, what happened with her? She got 786 days in jail and 3 years probation. That's a lot of time for something she did not do. But the coolest thing, and I want you to remember from the film, what Grace was able to pull out of her, and I believe the transition went from resistance to trust, was that Grace was able to ask her, what are your goals? What do you want from life? And that is something that we do with our clients, is ask them what do they want and empower them in ways which our different programs help them to get to that point. We walk with them and encourage them and do our best to inspire them, to motivate them to stay focused on your goals. You can do this. You are stronger than you believe at this moment, but we got enough, and we believe in them enough to help them on their dark days. And I'm grateful for every opportunity that we get to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm glad you added that. That trauma bond piece is really, really important, and something that is a lot of people don't know much about, but we see a lot of, unfortunately. Erin, Deanna was just talking about, how we ask our clients, what are your hopes and dreams for the future? Can you tell us a little bit about how vacature helps our clients achieve their hopes and dreams for the future? And what is, tell us more about vacature and the power of vacature.
I apologize if you hear any puppy dog barking in the background. He's a little salty about being in his crate. So with vacature, we are addressing the various ways that the legal system failed somebody during their exploitation. So many of our clients were arrested for various infractions during the point of time when they were being actively exploited and sometimes afterwards. And those criminal records could come from the activities that they were doing. As Dion said, the activities they weren't even doing, perhaps they were with somebody who forced them to take the fall, or activities that they kind of can't help but engage in after. And so one of the things I'm thinking of specifically are drug crimes. Sometimes chemical coercion is used in order to get somebody to do something in order to further exploit them, and their body becomes chemically dependent on that drug. And they might suffer with addiction after their active exploitation has ended. So there's a lot of things that can show up in somebody's criminal record. And the criminal record may hold them back in the ways that you're thinking of. They might face steeper penalties if there's a future infraction. They're going to have a difficult time finding a job with various clearances. You know, Iris was very concerned about whether or not she could still work as a nurse if she'd be able to pass the various background checks. But it also holds them back in ways that you might not be thinking of. It holds them back in terms of their family law arrangements. It holds them back in terms of their access to education and the finances to help support that education. So with vacature, we have the opportunity to undo some of those stumbling blocks and to clear their path a little bit. We are able to make it as though those crimes that are related to their exploitation legally didn't happen. They get to answer the question, have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime, with no, which is so powerful. And when their criminal record is run, when they are applying for that job as a nurse or a dental hygienist or whatever it is that they've decided success looks like, it comes back clean. And they don't have to explain to their employer or potential employer why this thing has previously appeared on their record. And it really just sets the stage for them to get at that success. Whatever they told us success looks like to them, we want to help them achieve that point. And vacature is a critical part in getting them to that point.
Thank you, Erin. We had a question from Michael, and Michael, I'm glad you asked the question. It's a great question. If anybody else has questions, feel free to start putting them into the chat. We can start answering your questions as well. I have a few more questions that I have for the panel, but I really want to get to your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them as well. Michael's question is that many cases must become apparent to law enforcement and courts, and that someone is a victim of trafficking, and do referrals come from them? And the answer is absolutely. We get referrals from law enforcement, from DAs, from public defenders, all of whom identify somebody that they're working with either as a client or a victim, is potentially or is a victim of human trafficking. So that absolutely. And we get, a lot of people ask just where do our client referrals come from? And in addition to those that I already mentioned, we get referrals from other social service agencies. So those serving survivors or other vulnerable populations. We get referrals from other survivors, from people will self-refer, and all those I already mentioned. And Dion, let me know if I missed any others, or Nick or Erin, feel free to chime in if I missed any other places we get referrals from. But really, honestly, all over the community, it's pretty amazing to see.
I would definitely. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Nick.
No, please go ahead, Dion. It's important to hear.
I was just going to say that we get referrals from FBI. We get referrals from safe houses, which totally they deal with survivors. For them to entrust us with the population that they serve is huge. And we also get referrals from the Las Colinas. And we've had one client from RJ Donovan, but we're going back in there. We're going to get some more.
And Las Colinas, for those who don't know, is San Diego's women's jail, and Donovan is a men's prison in San Diego. So, and yeah. Nick, the next question is for you. And so if you had anything to add, I know you're about to chime in. I'll give you a chance to add to that before I ask you your next question.
Yeah, just in terms of the appearance of a trafficking situation to law enforcement, it's not always obvious for a couple of reasons, right? The first is, one of the refrains that we typically hear from like boyfriend or Romeo pimp survivors is the phraseology that they use is something along the lines of, I invest in you, you invest in me. right? It's sold or billed to them as this type of symbiotic relationship. And then the reality of that situation is one person is being sold and the other person is spending the money. Right? That's the reality of the situation. But because of the team nature of the enterprise, or at least the appearance of a team nature of the enterprise, for many in law enforcement, it's sometimes indistinguishable. And really what it is, it's a matter of training, right? It's just simply they haven't been trained to recognize the situation for what it is. Most people don't recognize the situation for what it is. When we talk about sex work as a society, what we're talking about is something that people will sometimes jokingly or colloquially call the oldest profession in the world, as if it's something to aspire to, as if you could get a degree in it. Right? The reality is people have been exploited since the beginning of civilization. This is just a particularly insidious form of it. And there are ways in which exploiters are able to mask that exploitation. And so it's just not always obvious.
That's really, really good point, Nick. And one thing I want to add to that is not only is it hard for law enforcement to identify, who's the victim, who's the perpetrator, what's really happening, but very oftentimes traffickers are very good at erasing all tracks so that all arrows point to the victim. And there's a term in the human trafficking space called a bottom. There's a much more vulgar term that I won't tell you that's a longer term than that. But the term bottom is ironic because they're actually the trafficker's top girl. And what they do is they train that girl to then, and it's not always a girl, but it often is. I'm using gender pronouns here. Oftentimes they will train them to go out and recruit other girls, and then the bottom becomes their boss. And what that means is sometimes they do all the things that a pimp would do to the girls that they control. And what that does is it turns them into a pimp. And very oftentimes our clients share with us that they were forced into this. They didn't have the choice to say no. If they said no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to recruit her, I don't want to beat her up, I don't want to do anything, they would get beat. And so, if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's in that situation, if somebody is literally like beating and raping you, if you don't do what they say, what would you do? And the answer is, unless you've been in that situation, it's impossible to have any judgment for their choices. And it's a choice that no person should ever have to make. But too often, I hear over and over again from prosecutors of like, there's no evidence against the person who I believe is the trafficker. The prosecutors are like, I believe her. I believe her story. I believe that she's a victim of human trafficking. But all of the evidence in this case shows that she's the perpetrator. And I can't just let her go. And that's what we struggle with in our cases.
And if I may chime in one thing, and I will say, if you think back to the film, and when he pulled out the ID for him and her, and the cop knew something was wrong, but it was at that moment, and just like Nick said, it's all about training. At that moment, if he had been trained properly with regards to dealing with survivors, he would have had separated them to try and figure out. But what ends up happening? She gets arrested. Not safe.
Dion, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was going to specifically call out the ID because we put that in the script intentionally. There's little like HT 101 things in there to educate people, and that's one of most of our clients do not have any form of identification. And the main reason is because the trafficker took it from them and kept it. And that's part of how they hold them hostage. They don't have an ID. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything without an ID. And they know that. So that it puts them in more reliance on them and makes it harder for them to get away. So thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. Nick, the next question is for you. You are the manager of our Family Justice Program. And for those not familiar with our Family Justice Program, that is the program that provides family law services to human trafficking survivors. With respect to this case, what are Iris's legal needs going to be?
So what you don't see in the movie is that when Iris gets out and tries to get custody of her daughter, Darren's going to fight her for it. And what we see in a lot of cases is that The trafficker isn't fighting for the child because they actually care about being around the child. It's about power and control. In fact, the majority of cases, the argument for why my client should have more custody or primary custody is the trafficker's just leaving the kid with grandma or somebody else. It's about power and control, and they'll fight every step of the way. The other thing that's important to sort of realize is that court can be incredibly re-traumatizing for our clients. It impacts their memory. It impacts how they present in court. The court itself may not want to hear about the dynamics of the relationship or may not see the relevance. Like a trafficking story is not necessarily relevant to the best interest of the child standard in family court, right? It may be a history that just doesn't have a bearing on where's the child going and what's in their best interest now. The other thing is that courtrooms are austere, sterile, and uncomfortable places. They are, it's not a lounge. It's a room that's quite literally designed to convey the awesome power of the state to everybody who enters it. All right, it's just not comfortable to be in there. The other thing is that the legal system is overwhelmingly white, right? And it's not a comfortable place for any person with a different demographic background than that of a white person. It's just not. So, you know, what we see in a lot of our family law cases, we see a need for help with divorce. Some people have a hard time understanding how a trafficking victim could marry their trafficker. And that really gets to the crux of trauma bonding, which is something that we spend a lot of time educating the court on. Child custody. Sometimes traffickers have children with their victims. And we have to unwind these really complicated relationships. And then the other just overwhelmingly prevalent factor is domestic violence. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence pretty reliably estimates that about 1 in 4 women in their lifetime will be in a domestic violence relationship. 87% of our clients have reported being in a domestic violence relationship. There are, you know, one of the things that keeps me going through this particular process is just keeping in mind this metaphor that Dion shared with me. And our job is not necessarily outcome oriented, it's process oriented. Our job is quite literally walking our clients through mud. That's what the court process really feels like. Every step is kind of dragging you down and kind of soggy, and it's our job to sort of keep you moving and keep you walking.
Thank you, Nick. A very, very apropos analogy, as is the tunnel, Dion. I really appreciated that. It's really true. Aaron, one of my favorite scenes is the clerk scene because it's so realistic. Can you tell us? And we're laughing because we've experienced this. Like, this is real life. I just had, and I'm going to say that I just had the very first positive court clerk experience since starting Free to Thrive in the last week, where a clerk was friendly and helpful and did not question the existence of the vacatur law. Aaron, tell us a little bit about the process of educating the legal system.
I also really love that scene because it is so accurate to every experience I've had with a court clerk and vacatur. And I'm so glad that you had a positive one where you didn't have the existence of the law questioned, because I was going to say, I don't think we've ever walked into a courthouse and had the clerk know what we were talking about when we handed them papers that we were trying to file. The only thing that is missing from that scene is like a bank of court clerks sitting behind the desk, and that first clerk that we see turning to the people around her and asking what these papers were that just landed on her desk. It is also a cold and impersonal space. It's a lot of rubber stamping, and maybe they keep track of where the petition went, maybe they don't. Like, sometimes they get lost, they end up in the wrong courthouse. It is always an adventure. And every time that we are filing in a new space, we are trying to figure out their particular quirks. And they're not like cute quirks with that new person you're dating. These are like not fun quirks where you're like, oh my gosh, why is it such a struggle? Why do I have to teach this each time that I go into a new courthouse? But we do. And we find out a lot about the county. We find out a lot about the clerk system, the judge that's going to be hearing it, the district attorney or city attorney that's working on the case, and oftentimes the public defender who had previously worked on the case gets a little involved in the system too. But every time that we are filing in a new jurisdiction or jurisdictions that we've been in before, there's definitely that component of education and teaching the clerks, but also the judges sometimes, what the vacatur law is and why it's important. And then sometimes we try to slip in a little bit of extra education on how to have a trauma-informed hearing. As Nick was sharing, this is not, the legal system is not a trauma-informed system. They're not thinking like, how can I make a victim or survivor of something more comfortable? It's a comfortable place when you're me and you went to law school with the district attorney that's in the room, but it is a very uncomfortable place for our clients. And one of the moments that I really appreciate in the film is when the judge acknowledges that Iris had been in his courtroom before and congratulates her on these steps that she's taking and these achievements and milestones that she's achieving. Because that is something that we do see from time to time, and it's a little glimmer of a trauma-informed courtroom that we're trying to educate everybody towards.
Thank you, Erin. And one of the other things that he does is he doesn't out her. He doesn't tell the room of people, oh, this is a trafficking survivor and look what she's done. And I read your whole life story and wow, that was really, he doesn't do that. He acknowledges her in a really subtle and empowering way. So I really appreciate that as well, Erin. Before I get to the final question that I have, I want to know if anybody has any questions, and you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question or put it in the chat, whichever you prefer. But I want to make sure that we answer the questions that you all have.
I had one, Jamie, and we've talked about this before. These are all wonderful stories, and I love the passion and the commitment that Free to Thrive, its volunteer corps, as well as its paid staff corps have. I imagine, though, you don't get to every potential client, that there's only so much bandwidth for everybody else. So the question is, what's the demand and what would you need in a perfect world to meet that demand?
Wow. I'll take a crack at that, and then everybody else can feel free to chime in and add anything you want. You're right, Dave. The answer is the demand for legal services for human trafficking survivors is far greater than Free to Thrive has the capacity to meet. First of all, just to put it in context nationally, we are one of a handful of organizations around the country who does this particular work, which is holistic, comprehensive, trauma-informed legal services for survivors. I mean, I can count on my two hands and probably less than all 10 fingers, everybody in the country that exists that does that work specifically. There's others that do bits and pieces of it, but very few that do the whole piece that we do. And we work really closely with the other organizations that do exist. Beyond that, in California, we are one of, there's two other organizations in the state of California that do what we do. There's other organizations that we partner with, like I said, that do bits and pieces. But for the entire state of California, there's only 3 of us organizations. Dion is the person who answers our phones. I know her phone rings off the hook with potential clients, and we get a lot of people calling from a lot of places because there's so few organizations like ours. You know, when we started, we were limited exclusively to San Diego. We've been fortunate to get additional funding that allows us to serve survivors outside of San Diego. Our geographic area is now Southern California, but very limited, right? We can't take all the cases in Southern California yet because we don't have that much staffing, but we can in some cases. And the way we're doing it now is there somebody else that can help? And I can tell you that too often, you know, Dion, myself, Nick, Erin, we will go looking for some other nonprofit pro bono lawyers in other places to help a survivor because our bandwidth is limited. And too often we say, you know what, we're going to take the case because there's nobody else who can do it. Particularly in Riverside, we've had a few new cases come in from Riverside lately that that there's nothing like I refer to Riverside as a service desert. There's really nothing out there. LA has some organizations, but they are all overloaded. Orange County, we just had a meeting this week with a service provider in Orange County that was just absolutely thrilled at the ability that the fact that we now can serve people in Orange County because they are desperate for lawyers for their clients there. So the need is great. I think we had Fresno and San Bernardino come in the last week as well. So we've been really busy. Dion, you look like you want to add
I'd like
something.
to chime in just to say that we do have a lot of calls that come in, and we do look for organizations. And the most encouraging thing that even if we can't help them, we are willing to train another organization to make sure that they're trauma informed to deal with survivors. And I love that component about Free to Thrive. And I also love the fact that the survivor will call us to either update us on what's going on or to let us know things are not going correctly or not being dealt with the same way they are at Free to Thrive. And what do? We're not talking about people. We don't say, we just figure out how we can connect with them to help them understand the survivor's thought process and how they need to be dealt with in a trauma-informed way, and train them to the point where the survivor is empowered and encouraged and inspired. Because this dealing with their legal issues is not easy. Vacatur is a very long process. It's a very hard process. I'm very fortunate that the attorneys we work with are very passionate about what they do. But let's keep it honest, all attorneys are not passionate people. And they are not the most patient either. Just putting that out there. Sorry.
I actually have one quick thing to add too about the needs component. Even if a client has been referred to us, they qualify for our needs, it's not like their legal need is discrete to San Diego or to Los Angeles. And it's because trafficking isn't discrete to one city. They often refer to the path that a survivor may take while they're being exploited as their circuit. So maybe they're going all around Southern California, but it might be beyond that. And that's why having partners in the aviation industry and training people who are at TSA even to recognize some of the red flags is so important. And one of the things that I'm sure people who are familiar with human trafficking have heard about is that if there is a major tourist attraction or a major sporting event, there's going to be an uptick in human trafficking in that area. And it's not like it's happening just to young women, girls, boys, young men in that area. There are people who are traveling or being pushed into that area to fill that quote unquote need. So the need is definitely there for legal services, but it's not just Southern California. It's not just San Diego.
Really great point, Erin. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Jamie, I had a question. How many, it's been good, how are you?
Good, it's so nice to see you.
You too. I actually have two questions. One of them is about how many clients do you think that your team works with in a year?
Good question. I would say between 70 and 100 is probably a good guess. We've served over 200 clients since our inception, and we often have clients come and go. We'll help them and then they'll go off and then they might come back with some other need, or they might take a break from the case and come back. So some of our clients have been with us since the beginning, but I would say about 70 to 100 active cases. I'm looking at my data people over there. Erin and Nick are our data keepers. Am I close?
That's accurate.
I'd say 70 to 100 clients with
active clients.
far more matters, because it's never just one legal matter.
Exactly. An average of about 3 matters per legal matters, and probably about 3 non-legal matters per client, but some have many of both.
Many.
So we do, and we really we triage all of our clients' needs. So when they come in, the first thing we figure out is emergency needs, personal safety, food, shelter, clothing. Are these needs met? If they don't have those basic needs met, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they don't have a place to sleep tonight, how can they talk to us about cleaning up their criminal record? So first we start with those needs and make sure that they're addressed through our community partners. Once we make sure, sometimes this is the intake, and there'll be other times where we're meeting with a client who's been a client for a while, and we'll just say, how are you doing? What's going on? And they'll mention, that they're struggling with one of those basic needs, and we'll kind of put the legal discussion on hold and talk about those basic needs and try to connect them to services. Once we triage for those needs, really on a every single meeting basis, we look at their legal needs, and they may have a child custody case, they may need a restraining order, help with a credit issue, help cleaning up their record. And we look at all those needs and see what's the most urgent need. If they need a restraining order, that's going to go before anything else. And then if they need to clean up their record, that may happen down the road. First, we need to make sure they're safe from their abuser, their trafficker. And so oftentimes clients will be with us for a very long time because we're working through all these different things. And crises come up along the way, and COVID has really exacerbated that. So it's put a lot of our legal cases on hold and really, had us focus on non-legal needs. But it's a great question, Danny. Thank you.
Yes.
Never lost a restraining order hearing.
Yes.
I love that.
100% success rate. As Aaron and I have done some. Nick has done by far the most of our restraining orders, so we're very proud of that, and for good reason. But
even if it involved kicking the service bucket down the road for a year because we could not, for the life of us, find the trafficker, waiting for California to change its service of process law. Eventually they did it, and we still got that restraining order.
It's true. That was one of Aaron's big wins was that restraining order, who actually spoke with that client today, who's doing really well. Danny, you had a second question.
I did have a second question. With City Hope, we are just getting to where we are looking at what it looks like to provide training in for the Middle Eastern community about trafficking, and being able to put together and provide some training in Arabic and that type of thing. And I'm just wondering what you and your team are noticing regarding either sex trafficking or labor trafficking when it comes to our Middle Eastern communities or others that have come over as refugees or are newcomers to America.
Danny, I'm so glad you are doing that work. And one reason I'm glad is because we have so few clients. We do have some clients who are Middle Eastern and immigrants and refugees, but very few. And I think it comes from one, lack of awareness of what exploitation is, lack of awareness that there's help out there, lack of awareness that the laws are different here than where they came from. What they may be experiencing, whether it's sex trafficking or labor trafficking, may not have been a crime in their home country, or may not have been a crime that would have been prosecuted. Also, they've been coached by their traffickers to believe that they will get deported if they report them. And so they're very, very scared to come forward. And because you heard where our referrals come from, we meet clients in jail. We get a lot of referrals from law enforcement and from DAs and public defenders. And if they're not going to tell any of those people that, the full story of what's been going on with them, they're not going to get to us for help. So that education piece is so, so critical, and particularly in their native language. And each different immigrant group has different cultural contexts, different cultural beliefs about exploitation, or different, like they could be really shamed in their culture for what they've been through, right? And so just for pure social shaming, they might not speak up. So I'm very hopeful that the work that you are doing in the community will help bring more survivors to light.
And one of the things that Free to Thrive really worked on in the past few years was reaching out to immigrants who were coming by way of our southern border. And a lot of the trainings that we were doing were kind of training other service providers to spot some of the red flags, because we couldn't physically get in front of enough people to make that training necessarily effective. And one of the concerning things, of course, that we saw is like after we would do a training, we would have 5 or 6 people come up and say, hey, I saw this thing last week, but they're already gone. We'd be like, okay, well, it's good that you can retroactively spot it. And it's good that you know what the red flags are and the things to be concerned about and maybe ask some additional questions of are now so that you can help like going forward. But it was always so shocking to hear the number of people who were like, yeah, last week, yesterday, but this group has already moved on. So I think the work that you are doing to help train folks on spotting the red flags and also providing service to that group are going to be instrumental.
Absolutely. And that's particularly true of our refugees and asylees who are coming into the country, and they may not be trafficked into the country. They may have come, seeking asylum, seeking a safe place from where they came from. But when they get here, they're vulnerable because of their status, because they may not have a job, because they don't have a source of income. And so somebody could exploit them for their labor or for sex as a result of that status. So I think there's a lot of, misconception that people are trafficked here and sold for sex or exploited for labor. And that does happen. But I think with our immigrant population, it's actually, the research shows that people oftentimes come here with a legal status and then are exploited once they get here. I do want to get to our last question. I'm going to ask it of Dion, but then I'm going to open it up to our other panelists as well if they have anything to add, which is, what do you want attendees at today's event, or this evening's event, I should say, to know about our clients?
Thank you for asking me that question. I want you to know that they are and could be your neighbor or your sister's daughter or your cousin. I want you to not detach from a survivor as being someone who is amazing, but that experienced something bad that happened to them. Our clients are amazingly resilient. I can't say that enough. And I'm so fortunate I get the opportunity to remind them of that every single day. I hope that when you walk away from this event tonight, that you really reflect on the movie that you saw today, so that you're in a position that if you should see something, that you say something. Awareness is so important. Survivors for us are on their way to being a thriver. They just need support along the way. I am thankful that Free to Thrive was created so that we can help them with that journey. I'm inspired by those that are on the panel today and the Free to Thrive staff in general, because what you see and what I see every day and the way they go hard for clients, a lot of times you think about free and you're like, all right. But the legal services that are offered to them are second to none. He said no losses on the restraining order. When you know a client is crying because they just want him to leave her alone, a client who can't see their child because the person that has harmed them, they can't, when I say go hard, free, the value, I could not wrap it around it. But I want everybody here to know and be comforted to know that Free to Thrive exists. So that if you should see something, a neighbor, a friend, a cousin who is being challenged and in a vulnerable place, please have them call 619-693-6361. I promise you they will receive encouragement, and I promise you they will be empowered and they will be lifted up to the place where they should be.
Thank you, Dion. I don't know that anybody can follow Dion. um, you are amazing, and it's certainly a gift to our organization. I want to conclude by sharing with our Rotarians what you can do to help in the fight against human trafficking. My hope is that through this program, but also all the different training and education opportunities that you're being given, that you are inspired to help. And there's so many opportunities. One is just raising awareness. I mean, all of us at Free to Thrive do a ton of community awareness education. We have many partners in the community who do, and yet every time we do, we have an audience full of people who have never heard what we're telling them, and that shows that there's just such a massive need for community awareness. Certainly programs like this are a really big part of that, and just spreading the word, within Rotary. You guys are doing that. You went club by club, and now you're doing it as an entire district, and doing that even broader. I know that's the work of this task force, and I'm just absolutely beyond thrilled that you all have created this task force and that you exist. I will plug that LA has recently created an issue-based Rotary Club, which I am thrilled to say that I am a new Rotarian and have joined the LA Human Trafficking Rotary Club. And I'm absolutely thrilled. So many of you are my friends, and I have a number of Rotarian friends who for a very long time have urged me to join Rotary. And I'm just absolutely beyond thrilled that I've been able to join. And I see that, I know this is going to go out to a broader group than just this district, which is already doing a ton of work in this area. I encourage districts in other areas to do what District 5340 is doing, what the LA district is doing, and have your own cause-based club and have your own task force to really take action on this. I always say that if Rotary can end polio, Rotary can end human trafficking, and you can. I mean, there's no organization more equipped than Rotary to really make a dent in this global issue. I will say that I also hope that you will donate and raise funds for nonprofits serving human trafficking survivors. For those of you who are attorneys, please take pro bono cases. We have a very small legal staff, and the way that we do this work is through pro bono attorneys. So San Diego, other places, there's always a need for attorneys to help out. And then if you're not an attorney, volunteer with organizations that are helping out, within and outside of Rotary. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for, being a part of this journey with us, and for taking time out of your busy day to learn about this issue. This is half of it is just awareness. So thank you. And thank you to my amazing team for being a part of this and for sharing your experience. And Dave and the entire task force, thank you for taking this on.
I've heard you and your team and Dion and Nicholas and Aaron speak multiple times. I never get tired of it. The work you guys do is just absolutely spectacular and amazing, and part of the ecosystem that we're going to make a difference. And this is part of it, because this will generate the awareness in many respects with other Rotarians that we just haven't spoken with, and also hopefully be a model by which other organizations and other districts can emulate, and we are well on our way. So from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of the task force heart, from Mark, Bonnie, Mike, Danny, I know Denise is on here, and Lisa and others, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. You can see this as well as all the other workshops on the webpage that we are putting together for District 5340 and anti-human trafficking. Be on the lookout for some projects. We are in the final stages of putting those together for the coming 2021, as well as some other initiatives that we have coming up through district global grants and the others. For now, thanks so much for being here. Be well, have a great holiday. We'll see you next year, and hopefully in person sooner rather than later. Be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.